Tammy, thank you so much. Great introduction. And so again, I'm Kevin McPeak from Symantec. I'd like to thank Debbie Kilpatrick for all the hard work she did organizing this event and everyone else here. But I especially want to thank the parents and the students that are here, taking time out of your busy schedules for for learning more about such an important topic. So here I have my agenda, and basically going to go over some of the things I think are important when we consider students and how they're operating in cyberspace. But everything is to build up towards a better understanding of what Symantec LifeLock has built, which is called the Smart Talk. And the website for this is www.thesmarttalk.org. So, and I'll go into what that entails, but it's basically a really helpful tool for parents and teachers to navigate with students and children, how to be effective and safe in cyberspace. So my goal, and really I would say my passion, is to encourage everybody to get educated, to be motivated, and to feel inspired to sort of have good cyber hygiene, good cyber best practices, and to make sure that we're all safe when we're online. I'm sure all of us from time to time, as we're flipping channels at home, we might come across like the Nature Channel, and you always see that in the wild. When there's a situation with predators, a lot of times it's the young ones that are targeted for hostile attacks. And unfortunately, in as far as living here in Northern Virginia, very safe communities here, school system, excellent school system, very safe. But the internet itself can be a very dangerous place for young people, and it's a sort of situation where things can spin out very quickly, very suddenly, and it's important that teachers and parents and guardians are paying attention for the young people in their care and custody, that they're making sure that they're being safe. So a little bit about my goal and aspiration is that we really sort of double down on this effort. So let's talk about what is digital safety. So one component of it is privacy and security. So these are things like having strong passwords, ones that aren't easily guessed, using things like two-factor authentication. Also teaching young people that you don't use the same password for everything, because if you do, and if there's some sort of keystroke logging or something that's being transferred in plain text, somebody could pick that child's username and password, and then use that to access some of the other things that they're getting into, which can open up a whole bunch of bad things that can occur. The other idea is to make sure that you're avoiding scams. Tammy mentioned about a game where somebody could maybe encourage a child to get in a vehicle and go somewhere as part of the game, but is that creating a modality of thinking to sort of prep that child to do that sort of thing in real life? So teaching them to be situationally aware for that is very important. And also, protecting, what in the government, what's called PII, personally identifiable information, things like birthdays, social security numbers, PHI, personal health information of the child or the child's family members, keeping all these things safe and not sharing these things in an online environment. The other important thing with privacy and security is going through each app that the child is using and making sure that the security settings are good. And I really like that, Tammy suggested do that together with the child. Sit there, look at what they're logging into, look at the browsing history. You're not, basically, the child then has that expectation, the teacher or the guardian or mom and dad, they're going in, they're looking at these things, and they're doing it with me. So they're not sneaking around on me, but they are making sure that they're doing this, and it helps them to pay attention as well. So next thing, I'm sorry. There's the animation. So digital footprint and reputation. So this is the thing about, teaching young people to reflect on what things you photograph, what things you're posting online, what you're saying, because if you put something inappropriate out there, it's important to realize even if you later delete it, there's a good chance that it's going to come back and harm you. And what I always suggest to people is, if you have a phone that has the camera, which pretty much all of them do, if you snap any picture, even if you don't upload it to a site, that phone is still on a network. So if the phone itself is compromised, has some sort of malware on the phone itself or the tablet, any picture could conceivably leave your protective domain of the device and be out in the wild, so to speak. Relationships and communication. So, Tammy talked about having positive communities online, gave great examples of students that were doing that. So I think just, teaching young people to navigate, and as young people, they're learning how to navigate social experiences and group dynamics in the school and in their after-school activities, and in their communities where they live, but also online. So it's the same sort of ideas to avoid negativity and to promote positive community engagement. An interesting thing I observed it was actually on a podcast, a technology podcast, was talking about how artificial intelligence and all the breakthroughs, especially out in Silicon Valley, that they're doing around these types of artificial intelligence technologies, the artificial intelligence systems are learning to mimic human behavior and thoughts. And because there's so much negative content out there, what they're seeing is a lot of artificial intelligence is shockingly reflective of society, because a lot of it is coming out in a very negative way. Information literacy. So the whole idea is being able to learn, just like if you're doing research in a library, but also online, like making sure that the young person knows how to ask the right questions, how to frame things to get the right type of answers, and then to understand just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true. So being able to identify, find, and evaluate and use online information, and understand that the quality of information and the credibility of the sites that are hosting it are important. And also giving credit where it's due. If students are using online research for school papers or other activities, making sure that they're sourcing the sites correctly. All of that's part of information literacy online. Internet safety, of course, perhaps this is the most important part, at least of my presentation here, but the whole idea of being able to distinguish between inappropriate contact and also, what are positive connections. And also, especially at a young age, if children are online, explaining that somebody, like a lot of times with the gaming systems, especially during inclement weather, like what we're having, cold weather, children will go online and they will be playing games simultaneously with some of their peers in their classes or what have you. But if somebody spoofs a child or kind of joins their gaming community, it could actually be an adult who's feigning, a child status. So it's unfortunate. We talked about protecting innocence, but I think at a point where the teacher, parent, guardian needs to sort of explain that conceptually so the child knows just because somebody says, hey, I'm, 11 years old or what have you, doesn't necessarily mean that they are. Cyberbullying, I'm going to go into depth on that a little bit more, but again, being able to understand both the negative and positive actions that somebody can take online, and sort of the downstream secondary and tertiary effects that can have on their classmates or other children, and even in other parts of the country or even the world. So I won't read to you these various statistics on cyberbullying, but I think if you do look through you can see how disheartening this is conceptually. Things that I think students wouldn't necessarily say to somebody to their face or in a group dynamic. They might be more emboldened to do this sort of thing, when they're online and display these sort of negative behaviors. So being able to talk to your child about how their actions can cause emotional pain for others, and then also addressing your child that, as a teacher, parent, or guardian, that you are a safe person for that child to come to if they themselves are a victim of cyberbullying, and helping them to develop mechanisms to stand up for those that are being picked on in cyberspace. So I have here a video that I'd like to show, and I might need a little help from the back. Is there a way to launch this, or here we go. Thank you.
Player with a minute left cracked the shot, and unfortunately Kui wasn't able to stop it. It was in the back of the net, and the next thing we knew, the ref was blowing the final whistle. It's horrible, I guess, because as a goalie, that little one mistake, you know, is a goal, and a goal in soccer is huge. This guy said, "Oh, I'm gonna make a great photo album. We have a bunch of pictures of you making great saves." The photos went up, and I was just shocked. It was just, you know, horrible. After those photos were posted, there was a lot of tension. And like, I didn't want to go to school. I felt like taking time off. I didn't want that attention. I didn't want that negativity. We decided we had to do something. And eventually we found this great picture of Kui making a save. And the 3 or 4 of us at about 7 p.m. made it our profile picture. I came back about an hour later, and my newsfeed had exploded. It started with the soccer team making our profile pictures, and the girls' soccer team made it their profile pictures, but then the whole school got involved. Over 100 people had either liked it, commented on it, tagged themselves in it, made it their profile pictures, and it was like my entire newsfeed was covered in Daniel Kui stories. He came to school the next day like he was 10 feet tall. Once he had that confidence, he was just going for it, throwing himself out there like a ragdoll. And the next season, one game, they were just hammering shot after shot after shot. And Kui makes the best save of his life. He was parallel to the ground, he did a Superman dive, and the ref blew the whistle and we won the game. And I punted the ball up in the sky, and then I started running. It's like, wow. Best moment of my life. I'd changed from the freshman kid to Daniel Kui, the beast goalkeeper. The whole school had stood up for someone who needed it. He was a normal kid just like us. We have our highs and our lows, and that's when we realized that we were all Daniel Kui.
So yeah, if you could disengage the video piece of it, thank you. Oh. So pretty moving story. It showed both examples of cyberbullying, which is what happened initially, and then a good community experience where the students were proactive in creating a positive online environment for their. He was in the beginning of the video, you might have missed it, but he was a freshman playing goalie on the varsity team. So in the interest of time, I won't read all these to you, but the whole idea of signs that your child might be having some issues online. If they're up late at night online, if they're being secretive, if they're turning off their monitor or not letting you look at what they're doing, if they're being withdrawn around the family, if you notice some signs of depression, also if you find some inappropriate content on their systems, these are all things that as a parent or guardian you should get involved in some conversations with the young person, sort of see what's going on, and also have some hypothetical conversations. Run through some scenarios with the child to say, what would be appropriate to share, what sort of things at your age would be okay or not okay to put online. So these are very useful things to consider. But the key takeaway here is conversation is key. The whole idea to discuss things about your privacy online, integrating different apps and different websites, that several of us today will show you. These are online resources to help you to, go over and review and teach young people what is appropriate behavior online. And a lot of times it comes down to what's appropriate in person should also be appropriate online and vice versa, and showing them that there really shouldn't be a big gulf between who you are one-on-one and who you are online. And also to emphasize, come to the adult for help. If the child is overwhelmed in their situation, they need to feel very comfortable going to their teachers, parents, and guardians to get that effective support. So again, the real emphasis on the LifeLock program called the Smart Talk It's www.thesmarttalk.org. And it covers, basically when you log into it, you sit there with your child and you go over things around safety, privacy, and you click through it, and it gives you a chance to make selections. So you have a dialogue, and it kind of walks you through it, coaches you as a parent with that young person to sort of show them things around safety, privacy, what is appropriate screen time, what are the rules that are agreed on, what are rules specific to social media about respecting others, what types of apps can you download if the child has their own tablet or their own computer, their own phone, what apps can be downloaded, what things do you pay for, what things are free, the use of texting, what is appropriate, what things the parents should be able to review, and also making and receiving phone calls. These are all things that are navigated. And what happens when you're done is it prints, it allows you, it does a cumulative effect. At the very end, you actually have it. You can print it out, put it on the refrigerator or on the child's door, an agreement, and it can be signed by the child and the parent. So here are some additional resources. Again, the website, thesmarttalk.org, and also Common Sense Media, which we're going to hear more about, but that's something that Semantics very much supportive of. It's a great organization for improving cybersecurity online. Also, the Stop Think Connect campaign. This is something promoted at the government level. It's a public-private partnership. And also this link, the NSA.gov, under their resources pages, they have a Crypto Kids section here that has some really useful tools to help children develop an interest in cybersecurity and best practices online. So I'd like to thank you.
So great information from both. Thank you both, Tammy and Kevin. I needed to mention at the beginning of the program that each of you should have received a index card that you can write questions on, and what we're going to do is collect those at the end after our last panelists, and we'll have them answer. Someone will vet the questions just in case there's duplicates, but be prepared to turn those in. Someone will walk around and collect those, and we'll have a Q&A time at the end. So we're glad to have these experts here. So if you've got questions, this is your opportunity to present those this evening. So we're going to change up the conversation just a little bit. Now that we've heard about the threats and the importance of communicating with your children, our next two speakers are going to speak primarily about the resources and tools that are available to you online and other places for you to have those important conversations, and things that you may be able to share with teachers and others who could use in the classroom or in your community. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Barbara Huth. Barbara is an education program manager for Common Sense Education in the DC metro area. She partners with school districts across DC, Maryland, and Virginia to help educators and parents build the foundational digital citizenship skills for kids to utilize technology safely, responsibly, and meaningfully. Prior to joining Common Sense, Barbara was a national board certified science teacher. She holds a bachelor's degree in integrated health studies from Kent State University and a master's degree in comprehensive science education from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. At this time, help me welcome Barbara Huth.
Hi, thank you, Charles, and thank you everyone in the audience. I'm super excited to share some of Common Sense's resources with you this evening. Tonight, I'm going to share some tips, also some of the resources we have on our website to keep kids safe, happy, and healthy in the digital age. A little bit of background about Common Sense if you're not familiar with us. We are a nonprofit that's committed to making kids the nation's top priority. We provide resources to help families make informed choices about the media and technology in their lives. And we are all about sanity, not censorship. So before I get started in sharing some tips and resources, I want everyone to just take a minute and think about this question. So how do we use media in balance, find quality content, set healthy expectations, and raise media-savvy consumers and creators? That's a pretty heavy question, right? And good news, if you're worried about doing it right, you're probably not doing it wrong. There's no magic bullet. Tech and media move too fast for simple solutions. But there are some things that you can do to set yourself up for success. Some overall guiding principles that can take some of the worry and headache out of parenting around tech use. And Tammy mentioned some of these earlier, but first, co-use or co-watch with your kids. It's fun, you're getting into what they like, but you can also talk about the content that's presented, and you can make real connections with them. Know your own rules and be consistent. As a teacher, it was so important to be consistent with my rules and make sure I knew them. And have a follow-through. Make sure you follow up with a chat after, a rule's broken, or if a rule is not broken. Rehearse your expectations with little kids and make it fun. Encourage more creation. Have your kids create online and not just consume. There's tons of apps out there that foster creativity, and you can find those on our website as well. And also, on top of all that, make sure that we're being good role models. You can't expect kids to do things that we're not showing. Also, kids today aren't so different than we were. The struggle is real for our parents too. They want a chance for independence, opportunity to try new identities, and also acceptance from their peers. It's just that the context and rules of engagement have changed with more powerful tools that they can carry around in their pocket 24 hours a day. There are many things we can do to help our kids navigate their digital lives. For example, we can help them manage privacy settings, and as adults we should do this as well to protect our digital footprints. This is just an example of an Instagram privacy setting, and Instagram is normally set to public by default. And it's super easy to change it to private. You can just click on the button and then all of your posts are private, and you control who's your friend and also who sees your posts. So it's worth to check each downloaded app with your kids as a family. Now, settings can help block strangers from friending and commenting, but they can't prevent all negative online behavior, as Kevin mentioned earlier. And the CDC, or Center for Disease Control, estimates that cyberbullying affects about 15.5% of high school students. In comparison, about 20% of students have reported that they're bullied in person, just to give you a comparison. And some best approaches to bullying are make sure that your kid knows how to report abuse in an app. If an app is not obvious about how to report an abuse, then it's probably not an app you should be on. Encourage upstanding. Sometimes peers sticking up for peers is often the best defense. So make your child an upstander. Take screenshots. Encourage them to take screenshots if they are being cyberbullied, and tell a trusted adult about it. And if your kid is the bully, do what you would do in any situation with inappropriate behavior and limit access to the technology as the kid regains trust with you. One of the best solutions to bullying is teaching digital citizenship. Common Sense Education has a free digital citizenship curriculum that schools are using in this area and around the country. There are 8 facets to digital citizenship with our curriculum, and some of them include internet safety, privacy and security, and cyberbullying and digital drama. You're already teaching your kids to be good humans, but there's an additional layer to that lesson when kids are behind a keyboard. It can be easier for kids to say mean things or say things they wouldn't normally say when they're behind that keyboard. Beyond social media, there are other concerns in the world of media. There's violent content, there's inappropriate images, and there's also targeted ads. So how do we combat that content we're concerned about? Well, with little kids, we choose what they watch and what they interact with. But as they get older, they start making choices for themselves. And the goal is to help them make good choices on their own. So it's okay to check, but it's best to let them know that you will check and not not that you're checking to catch them, but to help them make good decisions. And always follow up with that chat. That's the most important part, because this opens the door for conversations if there's something that they're concerned about in the future. They feel like they can come to you and talk to you about it. We can also help. We know that technology moves so quickly and it's so hard to keep up. As a high school teacher, my students usually would tell me what's new and happening, but Common Sense does this work for you. We have reviews of books, movies, TV, apps, games that can help you. It tells you the age appropriateness of the media, and it also gives you like a quick overview of what the app or game is about. Some of them even include really short videos, about 1 minute or 2 minutes, that give you an overview so you can see what that app's all about. And then there's also a content grid that shows, things that you might be concerned about or excited about. Like, does it have a lot of good educational value? And then other things like, is there violence or inappropriate language? And then if you click on any of the tabs, it'll give you more detailed information for that specific app. And one of my favorite parts with our reviews is there's a section about what families can talk about. Sometimes it's hard to even understand what the app is about, so it gives you a little guide of some questions that you can ask with your kids about that particular app or game. So a big question that I always get is, what about screen time? What about the amount of time that kids are using media? What if it seems like they can't stop? And since we haven't truly defined a technology addiction yet, it's about feeling addicted, not necessarily being addicted. And you can see here that 50% of teenagers feel addicted to technology. And I'm sure as adults, we often feel this as well. So the best starting point for a balanced approach to technology use is to model the behavior you want to see. And like Tammy said, monitoring media use by using limits, right, not lectures, is also really important. Like having a device-free dinner or a device-free zone, like at bedtime, we don't have phones. Also, we want to teach our kids to make positive choices, so it's important to step back at times and mediate rather than constantly checking to build that trust. We also have family media agreements to make sure that everyone's on the same page. You can download these on our site, and they increase privileges but also responsibilities as they get older. And we have a ton of resources to get your device-free zone or dinner started. We have a device-free dinner toolkit. It even comes with invites so you can send them to your friends, activities for the family, and so much more. You may have seen some of our commercials with Will Ferrell as well, showing his device-free dinner. And since this is all a process and tech changes so quickly, you can visit our website to get more information. It's full of free content, reviews, parent advice, lesson plans, and lists that we've curated so you can find exactly what you need. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barbara. Really appreciate that. Thank you. That's good. So next up, and our last but not least, our panelists from the Department of Homeland Security. I'm still stuck on this device-free dinner. I'm like, I think all my friends would abandon me if I told them we couldn't have phones at the dinner table when we're hanging out. But for the kids, yeah, I'm going to support it. So our last speaker or panelist is Latasha McCord, who's with, as I mentioned, the Department of Homeland Security. She's a branch program coordinator within their Cybersecurity Education and Awareness branch, which is responsible for the department's formal education programs. In her role, Latasha is responsible for K-12 programs, such as the Cybersecurity Education and Training Assistance Program, as well as partnerships with the National Security Agency on the National Centers of Academic Excellence in Cybersecurity Defense. Also, the National Science Foundation on the Cyber Corps Scholarship for Service. She's a subject matter expert in designing instruction using available and appropriate technology in all its forms to help create a more 21st century classroom environment. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Latasha. Let's give her a warm welcome.
Well, good evening. Again, I'm Latasha McCord. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, Debbie, and to the PTA for having us. But let's get started. So I represent DHS, so I need for everyone to turn in their devices at the end of the program. That's the best way to keep our children safe. But the core missions for DHS, we have 5 missions, but the most important for tonight is to safeguard and secure cyberspace. So a little bit about my branch, which is CE&A, the Cybersecurity Education and Awareness branch. We lead the National Cybersecurity Public Awareness, Education, Training, and Workforce Development. This is the efforts to support the protection against and response to cyber threats and hazards to Homeland's economic and national security. So what is cybersecurity? There's a lot of information behind me about what is cybersecurity. I wish I could pass a microphone around to see what your thoughts are. But cybersecurity is basically unauthorized or criminal use of electronic data, theft, attacks on your information, attacks on networks, security threats, viruses, you all know. But why is it important to us? Why is cybersecurity important? So I wrote down 4 things, and I actually thought about this week. It's sharing sensitive information can endanger your child. Posting questionable content can lead to identity theft or social engineering. Broadcasting your location online can endanger your child and your entire family. And what I mean by that is when you're posting pictures and you add a location in Instagram or you add a hashtag, those things can be traced. The last thing, remember there is no, I'll say that again, there is no delete button on the internet. So please be mindful of what you post. So who is responsible for cybersecurity? I love this image. Everyone is responsible for protecting themselves, each other, our businesses, and of course the nation. So a properly trained cybersecurity workforce is very essential for private industry and government employers to protect our information, our networks, and our cyber environment. So a safer, more secure online environment. So DHS is here to help keep your kids safe online and to help prevent identity theft, securing your mobile devices, stop phishing attacks, and just staying safe on social media. We also have a Stop, Think, and Connect campaign that Kevin mentioned. This is a one-stop place for cybersecurity best practices, and it includes tips on how to keep you and your family safe online. And those resources were available in the cafeteria. I put them out on a table, so please feel free to stop by and collect a poster or grab a poster that has the free information where you can download different types of resources. So I was on my drive here, I was thinking about where does cybersecurity begin? Where does keeping our children safe begin? And it actually starts sometimes if you don't have that talk with your students at home, right here in the classroom. And I have the pleasure of wearing 3 hats or playing 3 roles. I am a government employee, I am a former educator, and I'm also a mommy to a 7-year-old who we are recruiting to be in cybersecurity today. So he will be taking my role in about 20 years, but he's excited. So we have tons of resources available, but like I mentioned, it starts right here in the classroom. And we have this program this grant called Cybersecurity Education and Training Assistance Program, and that's our CTAP. It's a grant that equips teachers with learning tools. 8,000 plus teachers use this curricula to impact millions of students, and it's amazing. So if you are an educator, I advise you to please visit the website. You can download the curricula. It's free. It has lesson plans. It's great. So please check it out if you can. Some other things that you may want to consider. We also have the National Centers of Academic Excellence. It's a CAE, and we actually have a local CAE here, which is NOVA, that was mentioned earlier. And then we also have the SFS, which is Scholarship for Service. So it's a Cyber Corp Scholarship for Service, which is a scholarship that is available for your students if they would like to join the world of cybersecurity. And these are ways to get involved. There's tons of resources out there that DHS offers, but the one that I really love is the Scholarship for Service, because your child can join the workforce and receive a scholarship and give back. And the way they can give back is giving back their time with an internship in cybersecurity or any discipline within cybersecurity, as well as giving a year back to the government. So we need your children to help us create a safer online. So that's some things to think about. So if you have any questions about that, I do have a lot of resources. So when I say scholarships, that means free money to school. So I wish I had that opportunity to not pay back student loans, or my parents pay back student loans. So I'm here to help you. So as I mentioned earlier, the Centers of Academic Excellence, these are some of it's over 200 designated CAEs in 46 states, DC and Puerto Rico, and this is where they are on the map. And then, as I mentioned also, is the local CAE, and NOVA is one, Northern Virginia Community College. And then this is more information about your Scholarship for Service. Any questions? And I guess we will have those.
Awesome. Thank you, Latasha, very much. Appreciate that. So, come to the very important part of the program, and right on time. If you have not turned in your index cards, I believe they have been collected, and there are questions that we're going to pose to the panelists for them to answer. So for me, there was lots of information and key takeaways for parents and students to kind of ponder and think about, and take some actions with your students moving forward. The first one, communication is essential. Very important that, again, you start the dialogue with your students in person, face-to-face, and talk to them about their use of the internet and what they're doing. Second, connecting with your child about their use of the internet, and as it mentioned, other media as well. What types of movies are they watching? What types of games are they downloading? So that you can fully understand how your child is using the internet in these particular instances as they talked about. And then last but not least, one that I consider to be very important is that it a shared responsibility, as Latasha mentioned, for everyone, not just teachers, but parents, community members. When you learn about issues and challenges that are impacting kids, or if you hear about something that's trending online, share that information with others. Because oftentimes people don't know, and maybe out of ignorance or just not fully understanding, they may pass along something or send information or pass a rumor that's not true. So I think we all have a responsibility to ensure that we keep our children safe, and one of the best ways to do that is by sharing the information. So at this point, I'm going to move to the questions, and the first one sounds like it's coming from a parent. I'm just joking. What should you do if you know your kids are not being honest with you? What should you do if you know your kids are not being honest with you, I presume, about their internet usage or activities? Who would like to answer that one first? Any parents? No, just, yes.
I'm assuming that they're not being honest about something they're doing online. And so, I guess first, I think one of the best things we can do for our students is to model. And if you didn't have some of these conversations with your child before they went online or got a phone, and now they're not telling the truth, the first thing I would do is sit down with my child and say, hey, I need to talk to you about a mistake that I made. We bought you a phone, but we never really talked about the expectations. And now we're here, and I have some important things I want to talk to you about. And I'm sorry we didn't sit down and have those conversations, but I want to talk with you about it now. And then I would address the issue. So that approach models two things: that making mistakes is a part of being human, and you're inviting them to have a conversation with you. And you're also setting groundwork for a future relationship around talking together about what happens online.
Anyone want to comment on this side?
Something that works well in my home, we play a trust activity. So we talk about what it means to trust each other and to be honest. So having those conversations can lead to being honest when it comes to posting things and what your student actually posts. So we try a trusting and honesty game. So that's how we approach things in my household as a parent.
Awesome. Anyone else? We have another question. So, panelists, we live in Northern Virginia. We have a great education system, and they're teaching our children well. Some parents are concerned that my child actually knows how to go and erase the browser history. They're smart. So I don't go back and figure out what they're doing on the internet. Is it possible for a parent or a guardian to use their internet router to monitor the traffic that's happening in their home? This will be a good one for you, Mike. Kevin?
So here's the thing: if you want to get into a cat and mouse game with the child, I think in the long run you'll lose, because they will acknowledge that you've sort of figured something out, but then they'll find some other workaround. They'll either do their behavior, they'll connect to a Wi-Fi hotspot at a friend's house or out at a coffee shop or what have you. They'll find some workarounds. So I think it really does come back to having that open dialogue, and almost, this is almost at a higher level of discussion of parenting in general. It's not even online, it's just in general. If a young person is circumventing family rules and parental control, and to some degree it's a natural process, right? Because young people want to test the boundaries of authority, and I don't have the deep expertise in child development or child psychology, but just human nature is there, and reflecting on my own experiences. But I think it's just having that open and engaging relationship with your child to really, help them to understand that you're in their corner. You're trying to help them to grow and mature and to make the right choices. And if they're messing up, you have to have, I think, both carrots and sticks in place. So there's reward for good behavior. There's also punishment for, if they're going out of bounds. I know Beth mentioned, like, during if your child is involved in bullying, actually taking the technologies away from them until that child regains your trust. So I think it's a never-ending engagement with the child on all levels, what they're doing online as well as what they're doing in other realms.
Barbara, I think this next question is sort of a follow-up to what Kevin's talking about. I think you may be able to answer this based on the work that you all do at Common Sense Education. Have some parents in the audience that are saying, you know what, I'm trying to keep ahead of my child. But the more I learn, they're catching up with me. The parent has found a way to block YouTube. They found a way to block certain websites. But by God, I can't figure out how to block these online games or other particular sites that I don't want my child visiting. Are there ways or resources for a parent to be able to determine how to change settings on devices or online so that they can control what their children can view online?
There's definitely ways, as Kevin was mentioning before, to monitor and to limit what your child can access, but eventually your child is going to be leaving your house, right, and on their own. And the most important thing that we can do as adults is teach them the proper use of a cell phone or a computer, because they're going to need that skill for their entire lives. And I think that if we're creating this environment where we're acting like, kids are constantly being watched, and that they're going to go and be sneaky and do things behind our back and find the ways that Kevin was saying earlier as well, to do those things. Teaching high school, my kids were extremely smart, and they would find ways around, media filters, but they would tell me about it because they trusted me when they did. So it's about, building that trust to be able to have those conversations. And if a rule in your family is that your search history is available, then that needs to be an expectation and you need to follow through. So if the search history isn't there, that's something that needs to be followed up with a conversation. Why isn't this search history here? Not necessarily trying to find another bigger tool to monitor their use, but that is your expectation that the search history is there. So that's, in order to use the device, the search history is available.
Charles, I just want to throw out one scenario, and I'm hoping that the parents here don't find themselves in this space, but in the event you have an out-of-control situation where you're doing all the correct things as a parent, you're having the engagement, you're really trying to make a difference, and the child's simply not responsive, and they're constantly doing the bad things online, and it's bordering into illegality or dangerous acts or what have you, or bullying, all these sorts of things. As a final destination, you could go with this would simply be, I think, full confiscation and a prohibition against it, with the exception you could have something set up in a family public area, like in the kitchen, so they can get online, do their homework, and do some basic research or some things, but it would actually be supervised. So you might be in the room doing some other things, but you can turn and look and see what's on their monitor and what they're doing. So that's a place you really don't want to end up, but I think that is one option. It's probably the best option amongst bad options if it did finally come to that. So maybe if the child realizes that's where things are going, that in and of itself might rein in their behavior.
And I'd also just like